to the VIP session. We see people coming in, so we want to welcome you on the first day of the Next Frontier, Conference and Expo. And so as attendees are coming in, we've just opened up the virtual room. Hopefully everyone has really enjoyed day one of the conference. It was pretty exciting. I got a lot of great feedback and a lot of congratulations notes that have been coming through. And what we're super excited about, of course, is the impact on the young people, the students and the early career stage adults, which is awesome. So it is just at 11:31 West Coast time, 2:31 East Coast time. So I think we want to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to once again welcome everybody to the VIP session. And let me tell you, you all, by the way, if I've not met you, my name is Landon Taylor. I am the proud founder and chairman of Base 11, and also a proud honored member of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity. And you're in for a real treat here at this session. We wanted to provide a VIP session in celebration of the partnership, the Parity Project and NFI Next Frontier Initiative partnership that was announced between Base 11 and Sigma Pi Phi from the main stage earlier today. And for those of you who did not catch it live, let me just give you a highlight. The Parity Project is a national call to action to achieve parity in the next 10 years. The African American population represents 13.4% of the population as of 2020. Yet, if you look on the left, the representation of the African American representation in each of these areas is far too low. An example being only 9% of the STEM degrees, 5% of STEM jobs, and for example, only 8.6% of Fortune 500 and other corporate directors. And so on the right-hand side, Sigma Pi Phi and Base 11 have come together in this partnership to have a call to action to achieve parity in these four areas in the next 10 years. 13.4% African-American representation in STEM jobs, 13.4% representation in venture capital funded entrepreneurs, 13.4% of the medical school graduates, and 13.4% of corporate directors. So that's the big announcement that was made earlier today. And the strategy that we'll be executing together is the Next Frontier Initiative. And as we mentioned earlier today, Base 11 has a goal of 100,000 students and early career stage adults by 2030. This partnership with Sigma Pi Phi is designed to ensure that at least 50,000 of those students and early career stage adults are African American, accelerated into the next frontier industries that you see on the right that include data analytics, cybersecurity, fintech, life sciences, ed tech, autonomous systems, private equity, and venture capital. The reason for these industries is because they're the fastest growing, the highest paying, the greatest opportunity for wealth creation, and the least represented by African Americans. And our goal is really to accelerate this game plan and achieve success within 10 years. This partnership started back in 2018 when Base 11 collaborated with Sigma Pi Phi when we announced a $1.6 million HBCU aerospace grant competition. If you were there earlier in the conference today, you saw the highlights of that with Morgan State University, David Wilson speaking about that. And I really want to thank lead executives from Sigma Pi Phi, Wes Coleman, Dwayne Murray, Doug Bender, Antoine Garibaldi, Greg Vincent for launching the partnership, and certainly now Dwayne for taking it to the next level. But I particularly now want to publicly recognize Antoine Garibaldi, who you saw pictured there. Antoine is the president of Detroit Mercy University, and he was critical to the success of the HBCU competition. He personally was responsible for reaching out to all the presidents of the HBCUs, making sure that they were aware of the opportunity that ultimately led to this great results that you saw earlier today. So Antoine, Dr. Garibaldi, I really want to thank you, acknowledge you, and toss it to you for a couple of remarks before we turn this session over to Orlando. Dr. Garibaldi. You're on mute.
Thanks very much, Landon. It's a pleasure to be with you, and also to see astronaut Leland here, Melvin again. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 2.5 years since Base 11 started, and Sigma Phi Phi began our partnership with really an explicit goal of increasing the numbers of underrepresented students in those fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so Dr. Taylor and I have spent a lot of time together, along with members of the Boulay's Grand Committee on Historically Black Colleges and Universities and Post-Secondary Education Access. And certainly, as you just noted, that $1.6 million Base 11 Challenge competition was one of the early starts of these initiatives. At the same time, it's also hard to believe that it's been only within the last 60 years that many Americans over 25 years old have had the opportunity to obtain a college education. In the 1960s, only 10% of Americans had earned a bachelor's degree. 11% were white and 4% were black. And back then, a college education was not only not affordable for most families, and particularly for many persons of color, it was also not even possible to get access to a post-secondary education because of segregation and discrimination. We're in a new day here, but it's taken quite a while for us to get to the numbers that we are even to this day. Even though those numbers increased by the 1980s with 20% of Americans over 25 years old earning a bachelor's degree, today we find ourselves in a challenge that indicates that we still have a long ways to go for all Americans, and particularly for Americans of color. Today, 36% of whites have undergraduate degrees, 22% of blacks, more than half of Asian Americans have a college degree, and about 15% of both Hispanics and Native Americans over the age of 25 have earned a bachelor's degree too. So we see this really as a very compelling initiative, and one that's extremely important. I'd like to tell students who are in college today that, particularly African American students, that between 2010 and 2017, there were 600,000 fewer African American students in college. So in order for us to reach parity, we have to really kind of call back and then also make sure that we increase these numbers very, very significantly. And this project is one of those that will help us in that regard. So that's one of the reasons why, in my role as Grand Sire Archon-elect of Sigma Pi Phi, I'm really excited, as is Grand Sire Archon Murray, to have Sigma Pi Phi partner with Base 11 on this very, very important project. We have much to do to increase the levels of academic achievement and also attainment in elementary and secondary education, colleges, universities, so that we can increase the numbers of bachelor's, master's, doctoral, and even professional degrees across this entire country and among all racial and ethnic groups. So I appreciate having the opportunity to express my appreciation to you, Landon, and for all of your team for the hard work that we're going to do over the next 5 to 10 years.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Garibaldi. Appreciate your leadership, and we're excited about the partnership, and we look forward to really changing the game together. So now we're going to move into having a lot of fun. I'm going to introduce our moderator for this session, Orlando Ashford. Let me just give you a little bit about his background, and you'll see why we were so excited that he accepted the invitation to moderate. Orlando Ashford most recently served as president of Holland America Cruise Line. leading the award-winning cruise line's brand and business, including its fleet of 14 premium vessels carrying more than 900,000 guests annually to all 7 continents. And what I really like is to see leaders who know how to lead in crisis. And many of you may have seen Orlando in the national news when he successfully negotiated the return of 2 cruise ships during the COVID-19 crisis to be able to bring back. And that really inspired me. Orlando acts as strategic advisor at Sycamore Partners in New York. And he serves on a board of directors of ITT Inc. as chair of the compensation committee. And he's also on the board of Hershey Entertainment and Resorts Company. Finally, Orlando is an author. His newest book, How Did You Get That Job?, takes a personal look at the rules and tools he has seen, used, and experienced in navigating corporate America, sharing perspectives and advice for those managing their own journey. I give you our moderator, Orlando Ashford. Orlando.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Landon, thank you for that introduction and this opportunity, and congratulations to you for what you're doing here with Base 11 and this new partnership. This is exciting. I'm happy to be a part of it. We are going to have some fun today, but I'm just the moderator. My job is to extract the insight and ideas from our 2 very impressive panelists. And the theme for what we're going to talk about today is around envisioning what's possible. And so in my book, my very first chapter talks about having a vision for your career and for yourself and for your future. And so that's one piece. And then the second piece is having a playbook for how to deliver that vision. So we're going to talk about that for the next 40 minutes or so. So a couple of housekeeping things. This is meant to be of service to you. And so we're going to talk for 20 minutes. We're going to identify 20 minutes for questions. Some of you may want to share some of your thoughts and questions while we're talking through chat. And so we'll try to catch some of those questions real time. And then we will have a Q&A session so we can leverage some of those questions via chat. Some of you may want to come into the panel space and actually ask your question live here in this session. And so we've got helpers in the background that will allow us to enable you to do that. And so if you raise your hand, and I'll try to call on as many of you as we can in the time that we have allotted. The other thing to keep in mind is that we have a little bit of a surprise at the end. So we have a special giveaway. I won't tell you too much more than that outside of it's really cool. And because I'm a panelist, I'm not eligible, unfortunately. But one of you that's participating will get a chance to get this giveaway. And so there'll be more about that when we get to the end. Okay, so why don't we get started? So what's most impressive, and I'll be brief with the backgrounds. You've probably read some of this already, and you can go out and read some more. But we've got 2 great panels, and I'll start by introducing Leland Melvin, who is an American engineer, a NASA astronaut. I'll allow him to describe how he refers to himself. He served on board the Space Shuttle Atlantis as a mission specialist, and he's the only man to catch a pass in the NFL and in space. He was a wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, and I was teasing him earlier, and I said, well, because he was playing for the Lions, that's probably what drove him to space. And any Detroit Lion fans out there, I apologize, but it's true. But Leland is a great person, and we're excited to have him on this panel. So we'll get started with him in a second. And then our second panelist is Ed Goines, and he is the Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and responsible for government affairs for the Seattle Seahawks. And another great person. I've had a chance to get to know Ed personally over the last couple of years, and so I know him both how talented he is professionally and what a great person he is personally. And so both of these gentlemen have great backgrounds, and we'll study some of that here in a second. But what's most impressive is just the type of people that they are, the energy that they bring to all that they do, and how humble they are. And that with all of the things that they both have going on, they're willing to spend some time here with us this afternoon to share some nuggets of what they've done and what they do. And so I'm really appreciative of this opportunity, and thank you both for being here. So why don't we get started? And, Leland, I'm going to start with you with a question. And so, the aerospace industry is forecasted to reach $2.7 trillion by 2035. Big industry, big market, a lot of money flowing around in there. And one of the things that's important for those participating in this session is not just to have the vision or the picture, but it's to try to translate what's the playbook, what's the career playbook, what are the things that I need to do, think about, consider in order to aspire to have a career like yours or to participate in some of that 2.7 trillion that's going to be applied to the aerospace industry. I'll turn it over to you, Lee. What do you got to say?
Hey, thanks, Orlando, for moderating, and thanks, Landon, for putting this together. There's a general excitement about space exploration as if you look at television, if you look at Hollywood, you see all of these movies about space, and usually that's the cart before the horse. And with companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, there's even a new company called Axiom Space that's building a private space station. So Ed, instead of you hitting the cruise line, you could take your trip up to the space station and have a little vacation up there. And there are companies like Made in Space. There's SpaceX making satellites like Starlink to democratize the internet, that people in sub-Saharan Africa can get internet service for a very cheap price to bring the library down to these places that don't have the access. And that's one of the things that Landon's always talked about is access, opportunity, and believing in yourself. And I think especially as African Americans, seeing people that look like them that are going off the planet, that's one of the ways that we can get more people, more diverse people in these careers. And that's why this whole Next Frontier Industry Conference is so important. And like you said, 2.7 trillion by 2035, but we have, if you look at some of the numbers from back in the day, humans that have been to space, 560. It's 14 African Americans that have been to space. World's richest billionaires have space investments. That's 16 out of 500. Cislunar economy, that's near the orbit around near the moon. In 2045 will be the $2.7 trillion, and planned human missions to Mars for 2024 to 2030s are going to happen. So I think about all of these, getting water from the moon, people living on other planets, us using this technology to help life be better on planet Earth. These are the things that are happening. And if you think about Space Age 2.0, reusable launch vehicles, the growth of private ownership in the market, investment by more than 80 countries, and the falling launch costs are the things that are going to, drive this market to 2.7 trillion. The STEM career playbook is where we can get kids to think about, what was my journey to space? All of us know how to get to the NFL. I had a chance to play with the Lions, as you said, and, they cut me. So I'm not, I'm not a Lions fan, even though
you weren't crying this weekend. Okay.
I wasn't crying, no. But if you look behind me, there's my Lions jersey off the planet on the space shuttle. And, my ability to go to the NFL came from all little boys know that you go to Pop Warner, you go to middle school, you go to high school, you go to college, and you can get drafted to the NFL. But the STEM playbook is, how do you become a STEM engineer or scientist? How do you become an astronaut? And not many of us know how to do that. We kind of just fall into that. And so this STEM career playbook is where I'm interviewing some of the top CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies to ask them what was their path to getting Shotwell. She was one of my first people that I interviewed, and she said that the thing that got her interested at 15, her mother showed her this woman who was a mechanical engineer, but she also had a fly suit, and she was her pocketbook matched her shoes, and so she was drawn to that because of the A. We talk about STEM, but there's an A for the arts that's in there too. So STEAM. But, whatever path, whatever method we can use to get kids excited about these opportunities and let them see the connecting blocks to this career. And so that's the big thing about the STEM career playbook. And we're going to continue to populate that with lots of different people. Maybe we're going to get you in there one day and have you talking about your journey, because everyone needs to know these different journeys to greatness.
Yeah, that's great. You know, it's interesting, as you said, that, this whole idea of painting a picture. So for me, there was a show that I watched long ago. I'm starting to date myself, called LA Law. And in LA, Blair Underwood was that young, brash lawyer, and he was in a cool suit and had a cool briefcase. And I said, gee, I like that look. I need to figure out how I can position myself to have that look. And I didn't become a lawyer, I became a consultant. So we all pull energy from different pictures.
Right.
How did you decide to become an astronaut? Like, so president's one thing, it feels tangible, but literally that's out of space. So how did you decide, you know what, I'm gonna go out of space? How'd that happen for you?
Well, Orlando, when the moon landing happened in '69, Apollo 11, Neil and Buzz, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I was the kid I was 5 years old, holding the rabbit ears on the Sylvania black and white television set. So I was trying to look around to see what was going on, but really couldn't see it. And I didn't want to be an astronaut. I wanted to be Arthur Ashe. He trained 5 blocks down the street from where I grew up. But when I went to NASA and started working there as a research scientist, a friend of mine said, "You'd be a great astronaut." I just laughed at him. He handed me an application. I didn't fill it out. And that same year I didn't fill the application out, one of my buddies filled it out and got in. And I said to myself, if that knucklehead can get into the astronaut program, so can I. So I applied the next selection and I got in. But the things that happened before that was he flew back to Langley in a NASA T-38, this high-performance military jet, and he landed there with John Young. John Young walked on the moon, and I gave John Young a presentation, and John Young said, "Leland, you should probably become an astronaut." I said, man, if a guy who walked on the moon said I can become an astronaut, maybe I can do it. And so sometimes you need that mentor, that person that speaks into you that you can do something, because sometimes you don't believe it in yourself.
Right. That's powerful. We're going to come back to you and talk some more, but I want to pull Ed in on this a little bit. And so, Ed, as I talked about, you work with the Seattle Seahawks, a great organization, a great team, and a lot of people spend most of their energy focused on what's going on the field, which is, the product, and that's what's exciting. But there's a lot happening with technology and safety and things like that. Talk to us a little bit about that intersection between technology and innovation in sports and some of the things that are happening in your business.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to be here, and thank you, Landon and Base 11, for having me. First, I want to talk about Leland, talking about creating communities and things out in space. I mean, we already have enough travel distance to get to games. If you're going to have all those communities out there, you may end up having a sports team, an NFL team in space, and we don't need to travel that much. But I think it's exciting. And in Orlando, like you, I'm a lawyer, but I became a lawyer in part because of LA Law. And I'll be honest with you, LA Law was a big draw on me as well. And I think we're probably around the same age, and that made me think about possibilities that didn't exist before. So I kept thinking about those things and thinking about, how do I go? I want to be a professional. I had no idea what that meant or how to get there. Parents and no one in my family were professionals. So I kind of, on my own, it's sort of like Leland, fortuitous things happen where you sort of, it turns a light bulb on for you. One thing that happened for me was I met a lawyer who happened to be in sports. And I thought, wow, I love sports. I love law. And so I started looking into it, started talking to people, started doing interviews, and really got to know what it requires. And having done this now for almost 25 years, and I'm working with the Seahawks now. I've also worked with the 49ers. I won't say that too loudly. And also I've worked in Major League Soccer. What I've gotten to know is the business of sports. And there's so many times new teams or new players come on our team from different places. I don't know how many times I've sat down with them and had conversations about what goes on behind the scenes of a sports team. And so one thing that I want to talk about today that has really been a ground, it sort of changed the landscape for sports was COVID. And when COVID hit, it hit everybody. And we're in the sports business. We're in the entertainment business. We are trying to put on programs and games so that people can have fun. And so there was no one in our operation who had dealt with this before. So my training as a lawyer and as a disciplined person, I did walk into that void and figured out a way for us to still have a set of either return to play or fan protocols that we can all call upon. And so we went to work. Luckily, like I said, it hit during the off season for us. So we were able to watch the NBA, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, and others and understand how they were able to do it. And we went to work on putting together a safe return to play protocols for all of our teams, which had a number of components. Obviously a big education component, so players understood how to keep yourself safe. Remember, early on during this pandemic, people didn't know what this virus was. So we had a lot of education for players, coaches, and staff, put in a bunch of protocols on how to, or who can access the facility, who can't, a bunch of testing. And I wrote most of those protocols for the Seahawks, but in conjunction with the NFL. And as a result, we haven't lost any regular season games to COVID. In fact, no games have been canceled. We've had some postponed. We haven't had any players to test positive, or coaches or staff. And one of the cornerstones of that protection is making sure that we limit the spread of the virus, because we know it's out in the community, people are gonna get it. But from the beginning, we wanted to make sure we limit it. And one of the things that we did is, in addition to copious amounts of PPE and testing, and we categorized people into tiers so that people, for our operation, you're either a tier 1, a tier 2, or a tier 3. A tier 1 would be like a player, coach, team position, people who are going to be around each other all the time. We wanted to make sure that if something happened in that group, that it would be limited to the group that you're in. So we also tiered people into tier 2 and 3. So tier 2 would be like additional support staff, laundry assistants, people like that. Tier 3 people are people who are like kitchen staff, cleaning crew. We wanted to make sure tier 3 people never came in contact with tier 1 and tier 2, even though we need food, we need the building to be clean. So we called upon a company called Connexon, and they make this little tracking device. And this is where I think tech in sports hadn't really worked this way before. This little 2x2 tracking device, you can either wear it on your wrist, you can wear it at lanyard. Everyone who comes in our building, team travel, no matter where you are in the stadium, you're wearing this device. And this device emits a sound and visible light. If a tier 3, for example, comes in contact with a tier 2 or tier 1, or if a tier 1 is around a tier 2 for longer than 10 minutes. So the idea is that it creates a tracking system for us to be able to know when people are following our protocols or not. It's worked great. And so you'll read in a newspaper sometime about fines or discipline that the NFL has meted out to some teams. And a lot of it's based on the data that this little device gives back as to how long people were in contact. Were they coming up into some congestion areas? And we've had there's probably 16 now, probably different amendments to our protocols that we have to write and rewrite. But the idea being that keeping people safe, keeping players safe, keeping staff safe, a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that people never even know about. But we wouldn't have the game if we couldn't keep people.
That's fascinating. I actually have other questions I'd love to ask you, but we're going to be tight on time. So I have one more question I want to ask each of you, and then we're going to move to open it up to questions from the audience. As you both know, there is a backdrop on top of COVID around social justice. It's played out, after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all of those terrible and unfortunate incidents that have happened. It's played out in the discussions in the elections. What actions do each of you take personally and professionally to fight, to influence, to put a stake in the ground, have a point of view as it relates to social justice? So I'll start with you, Ed, and then I'll come to Leland.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking, Orlando. You're right. On top of COVID came the George Floyd murder, and that just again threw people to the side and wondering, what is our country about? Where are we going? For me, my honest first thought was, here we go again. People are sort of they're shocked by this. I wasn't shocked anymore. I'd gotten tired of it, quite honestly, of seeing unarmed Black men killed. And so when I started to see this sort of groundswell of people really, really sensing that this needs to change, and it wasn't just the same people saying it, there were people all over the country saying it, it started to make me think that maybe there is some transformational change here. Maybe we can do something to help equity. And so I actually went out and found 2 New York Times best-selling writers on race, but not like what people want to hear. One of the writers, her name's Robin DiAngelo. She wrote a book called White Fragility, Why Is It So Hard for White People to Talk About Race? And I also found a brother named Resma Menakem. And if you haven't read his book, you really should read his book. It's called My Grandmother's Hands. It's about racialized trauma and how it's passed down from generation to generation, not just on one side of the ledger or another, all people, that this country has been traumatized by the racial divisions. And that has happened for generations. So we had them come in and talk to our entire operation, coaches, players, staff. We had a Zoom call, but entire operation to really dig into, interrogate our own sort of issues around race and who we are as a people. That was the biggest, most impactful talk we had. And since then, we've kind of gone on with roundtables and unconscious bias trainings, but we've also decided to take that learning and take what we felt about ourselves to figure out how we can connect better, and then figure out how we connect better with our community. So we are sponsoring this fund in the state of Washington called the Black Co-op Future Fund. It's a fund started by 4 Black women who are leaders. They've been leaders in the community, like the Urban League folks and some others, who have said enough, that they want to focus on how can we build Black generational wealth in this community. And then also how we can align with philanthropists to say, hey, philanthropists, you've been doing it this way for a long time and it hasn't worked. Let us show you how you can really help the Black community. And so we as a group, as a Seahawks, have decided that's the kind of thing we want to be behind. Me personally, and I've luckily gotten all of our management to get behind it. So
that's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I caught those 2 books. One I read, the other one I'll read. Leland, same question to you.
Yeah, Ed, that's fantastic. Thank you for that work. When SpaceX, the Crew Dragon was first launching, I was down in Cocoa Beach about to watch this thing go up, and we had a delay. And I went down to the beach, and I then heard about George Floyd, and I was incapacitated, because we're doing the most technologically advanced thing, sending human beings to space. And this rocket can come back and land on a barge in the middle of the water, but we can't get our stuff straight in our own country. And that's when I try to be an unfiltered advocate for those people that don't have voices. And especially the intersection of race and space and technology, and making sure that, these kids that are coming along that are incapacitated by all this injustice, that they maybe can find a voice and a vehicle through technology that will empower them with resources, also with the ability to rise maybe sometimes above those circumstances of poverty and other things. And so I've been trying to be more of a voice around that, when sometimes in these positions, we don't sometimes use, when you're one of just a few in a position like this, you sometimes don't always speak out vocally and unfiltered about how you're feeling. And so that, I think that's what I've done more of, is to try to be more of an advocate like that. And Victor Glover is going to be the first African-American male to fly on SpaceX this weekend, the 14th. And he's going to be the first long-duration crew member. He's going to be up there for 6 months as an expedition crew member. So getting that message out to as many kids and people as possible to know that you can do these things and navigate safely throughout this journey to do these great things.
That's great. Kudos to both of you for those direct actions. I think that's important for you to share. So as you've both been wildly successful, you are both still very conscious, and as the young people say, woke. I think they still say that. and leveraging your platforms to create positive energy for those coming behind you. So I commend both of you. So we're going to open this up for questions. So again, some of you have typed in some questions, and so I can read a couple of questions to our panelists. And then some of you, if you want, if you raise your hand, and we can try to bring you in live so you can ask your question. I'll read this first one here, and I think this one's to Ed. So it says, Ed, you mentioned the mistakes that philanthropists make. What are some common ones? And importantly, what new guidance are you providing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the biggest mistakes philanthropists make is getting too wedded and tied to their reporting and how grant writing and putting together. They're almost tied to the procedures. They're so wedded to the procedures that it ends up causing a lot of small operations who are doing great work, who don't have staff of people to write these sort of burdensome reports all the time, to not apply or to not be given the grants. So the ones that are doing the best work, the small ones, and sometimes larger entities are doing this great work, but they don't have the game, to be honest with you. They don't have the sort of like, how do you play the game to write grants, to make sure you keep the philanthropists happy, and then give us the money, versus, hey, philanthropists, look at the good work that these people are doing. Look how, essentially, turn to them to tell you how you should be giving your money out, not the other way around. So that, I think, is the biggest one. And I would, whoever asked the question, I would definitely refer you to the Black Future Co-op Fund website. They're a part of the Seattle Foundation, but they've got a list of sort of ways that they're going to attack this problem. But that's the highlight, I would say.
Perfect. Now, here's a question that I'll ask you both. So one that came through. So given the results, I think, of the 2020 elections, has that changed your thoughts about the work that we're here talking about today? Base 11 and this idea of promoting and bringing more people of color into the STEM field. Any perspectives that the current outcome of the elections has on influencing your thoughts on that work?
Ed, you want
to go first? Sure.
Yeah. I think, what Landon talked about earlier about the parity project, I mean, until we get parity, the work has to continue to go on. But when you see an African-American woman in the White House who's working there as a leader in the White House versus, cleaning, doing something else, but she is a symbol of what is possible. And I saw a picture the other day of Kamala juxtaposed with all of the other vice presidents in our country, which were all white men. And so that is something that will inspire not only little girls, but little boys too, to see that change has happened. But the work still must go on because the parity is still not there. And we got to keep on with the journey of helping inspire and motivate that next generation to see themselves in those positions, in your position, Ed, in your position.
Yeah. You stole my answer. No, that's fine. You stole my answer. I think the symbolism of it is the biggest part of it. It makes people believe that they can. We all talked about seeing something that stimulated in us a desire to pursue it. I think the symbolism of it, I actually know Kamala from my days in the Bay Area. It will be beyond symbolism. I guarantee you, it'll be substance. So I'm really happy about her being in that White House.
Okay, a little name drop. I caught that. Good job, Ed.
Stop there.
Hey, I think there's a Christian. You had a question, and are we going to bring you up onto the screen so you can ask your question? I think somebody behind the scenes.
I am bringing him up. Christian, I think it should say rejoin as a panelist, and you'll want to click yes.
He has to unmute himself.
Yes, let's unmute.
There we go. Christian.
So I have a question for Leland. And so like I'm a standout swimmer and a runner. So I was wondering like, so did you take the skills you learned in football and like, did you apply it in any way to your aeronautical career?
Christian, that's a great question, sir. And everything you do is applying to whatever you're going to do or be. You know, when you're swimming, that's discipline. That's hardcore discipline. I mean, I'm not a good swimmer. I wish I could swim like you. And a runner, you know, you have to get in the mindset of, you know, it's hurting, it's painful, but you're having to keep driving on. And that's the same thing for flying in space. You know, you may be in a situation where you have 8.5 minutes to the space and things are failing and breaking in our simulators. It didn't happen in space, but you have to have that discipline to stay the course and not give up hope that you can solve that problem to save the day. And those things complement each other. The muscle memory, the brain muscle memory to solve problems, it's all connected and all combined. So I think what you're doing with your running and with your swimming will complement all of your academic pursuits also. And I just want to tell you, because you're going to be that next generation of explorers, I have a signed copy of my book, Chasing Space, for you. I'm going to send it to you. And I've also made you an honorary astronaut, brother. So you can do anything you put your mind to. Keep the course, stay the course. You know, Orlando, Ed, you know, these brothers are doing incredible things. Follow them, follow people, mirror what other people are doing, glean, take the best parts of what they're doing and apply it to your own journey. Don't try to be like someone else, have your own special journey, but take those parts that you can use and do your thing, man.
Yeah, that's a great feedback, Leland. Christian, thank you for asking that question. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Over the course of my career, there would be, you know, whether it was somebody in my neighborhood or in my church or that I saw come speak at school, and there'd just be little tidbits that they would do. I just liked the way he answered that question. I liked his style, and I would just grab some of that and then put it into my game. And then, you know, 20, 30 years later, you know, hopefully it's worked out. And so the fact that you're asking these questions now and that you're curious now and you're trying to figure it out gives me complete confidence in the success you're going to have, for sure. So thank you for that. All right, we've got a few minutes left, and I'm going to combine two questions that I saw, and I'll ask this to both gentlemen. So one of the questions asks about what were some of the hurdles that you have had to overcome in your career to move towards and aspire towards your goals and objectives. And then the other question was about what are the daily thinking rituals that you have or that you employ in order to drive and promote your success. And so I wanted to combine those questions because I think they play together, because we all have hurdles that we have to overcome, but then there's things that we do or manage mentally to prepare ourselves, toughen ourselves up, or relax, whatever it is. And so, Leland, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Ed.
Okay. I think the biggest thing, hurdles that I've had, there was abuse as a 5-year-old by some neighbors that, you know, again, one of those things that can incapacitate you and make you do that or make you have, you know, other dependencies and things. But I always had these other people around me that believed in me, that uplifted me, that kept me going. When I was in high school, graduation night, I was almost arrested. The police officer told my girlfriend that I was doing something to her that I should go to jail, and she didn't bite on that. And she said, no, he's a good guy, he's going to college, you know. And so those two moments were tough. The other really big hurdle was when I was training to become an astronaut. I was in a pool, 5 million gallon pool, and I lost all my hearing. I was completely deaf, blood coming out of my ear. They did surgery. They looked around. They couldn't find anything. And every one of the doctors said, you will never fly in space. And they said, we will not let you fly in space because we don't know what happened to you. And I stayed the path. I kept going. My father always told me to keep going, don't. People said you should sue NASA, write the tell-all book and get paid. I didn't have to write the tell-all book to get paid. I wrote this book and got paid, you know, but it's like staying the course, staying the path. And because I didn't give up, because I kept going, there was another doctor who was in charge of all the other doctors that believed in me because I didn't give up. And he signed me the waiver to fly in space. I didn't fly once, I flew twice. And so keeping the path, believing in yourself, aligning yourself with people that believe in you. There are lots of callers, baller shot callers, there are haters, there are people that are in your camp that are really haters. Get all those people away from you, find the people that really care about you. And then the mental preparation is really about the discipline, the same discipline that comes from, sports. And I think when I was studying, I would do the even problems that were assigned, and I would do the odd problems too. I would get this joy of repetition, of continuously trying to perfect that mind, trying to perfect yourself, just like, running 50 down and outs to make sure that it was perfect. I didn't have Russell Wilson throwing to me, Ed, but he was in Richmond, I was in Lynchburg, but we were probably channeling each other's energy. But it's that joy of repetition and discipline to ensure that you are doing the things that you're supposed to be doing to rise, Orlando.
That's great. Great. Ed, same question. Hurdles in your life and career, and then mindset to manage and overcome.
Yeah, sure. I guess hurdles and obstacles were, I grew up in this country. I grew up poor. I grew up Black. I grew up in the South. I grew up in a post segregation de jure, but essentially segregated de facto. So Southern upbringing, deep South. And it wasn't so much the skin color or the income level. It's really the mindset, right? That you grow up with the mindset of a lot of people who have that colonized mind about race or about poverty. And that colonized mind is shared. It doesn't distinguish between races or whatever. People share it. And so they tend to act that way. So I think that was the biggest obstacle, is really getting over people set in stereotypes, ideas, ceilings about all sorts of things. And so what I did from a mindset standpoint was to actually believe people when they said things positively. When they said something positive, when some teacher said, you could be anything you want to be, she may not even believe it, but I did. Or when my own relatives would say, you can't be anything, or you won't be this, you won't be that, to not believe it. So whatever I chose to be positive about, or whatever I chose was always positive. I was going to always be positive. And so I looked for elements of success within someone who's overcome poverty and become a leader, or someone who was Black in this country and became a leader. Back when I grew up, I had no role models in my own hometown, or even probably going out for miles outside of it. So I had to look outside. I had to look at TV. I had to look at things that I looked at. Mm-hmm. That's a positive thing. That's what I want to be part of. So my mindset was, find positivity out of anything you can find. Anything that someone says, does, or action, I want to find something positive about it. So I focused my life on being positive, because I knew that the alternative is a dead end. So That's how I did it.
Perfect. I think we have time for one more live question, and then we'll start to wrap up. So, Christine, I'm going to ask you to pick one of those couple.
Well, while we wait for that question, can I ask you a question, Orlando?
Sure, you can.
I'd love to, because it was mentioned earlier by Landon, I think, that you had been on some media in regards to trying to get these ships back during the early days of COVID, where I assume these ships are out stranded with nothing, with not just staff, or not just passengers, but with staff and everyone on it. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that experience and how that went?
Yeah, I'll do that, and then we'll come back to Brianna. I think you have a question, but I'll just answer your question real quick. I mean, so one, that was the toughest thing I've ever had to do in my career. So imagine have a ship that's stuck off the coast of South America with some people sick. We're not sure if it's COVID, but because there's such fear of COVID at the time, no ports would take our guests or take our ship in. So we couldn't get provisions or supplies. So in an effort to try to help that ship, I took another ship that had no guests on it and deployed that ship down to be helpful, to try to be helpful. And we had to negotiate with the Panamanian government to get the ship through the canal. We ended up having to negotiate with our own U.S. government to get the ships into port. And I had both extremes. Somehow my cell phone got out into the public domain, and I'd literally get a phone call from a daughter whose mom or dad was on the ship with their whole family on speakerphone, imploring me to please get the ship in because my mother's on the ship and we're worried about her. And then I would hang up and then my phone would ring and it would be somebody in the state of Florida cussing me out saying, don't bring that ship in here with all those people with COVID on it. Mm-hmm. And that was my life for about, a month. But when you are in difficult situations, this is where growing up in Jersey kicked in, and you kind of rely on your street smarts. And I was calling people. I wrote an op-ed that went viral. Over 100 million people viewed that op-ed. It influenced the government, the State Department, the governor of Florida, the local authorities, and we were able to negotiate getting that ship in and getting people home. But so it's one of these things.
Nice work. It just
Great job.
It means you were the right man for that problem, and you were in the right place at the right time. So, thank you.
I appreciate that. Brianna, ask your question, and then we'll answer your question, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Sure. Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for sharing their inspirational story with us. It's very valuable for people like myself who don't have successful minorities like you all in my community at hand to hear your stories of success. So thank you for that. My question is, what advice can you guys give me being a soon-to-be graduate and first engineer in my family, and making the transition from a student to entering this new career world? I'm no longer looking for internships, I'm looking for jobs. How did you guys navigate that time in your lives?
So Leland, we'll start with you, then Ed, and then we'll.
Yeah, it's funny, Brianna. I was, when I was graduating from graduate school at University of Virginia, I was thinking of getting a job with the chemical company because they made, DuPont and Dow, they made more money than the federal government. But at this career fair, there was a woman there who was like, you're going to work for NASA. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going to get paid. And she was relentless. Her name was Rosa Webster. She was a African-American physicist who worked at Langley who could give me a job on the spot. And the career fair was over. She said, help me take these books to my car. I'm walking to her car. We're talking. And I said, you know what? Let me just give it a shot. And it was the best thing that I could ever have done. So instead of, if you're, find out what is the thing that you really want to do inside, but listen to all the people that are coming with potential opportunities and then filter out to make sure it matches with what you want to do. There may be things out there you don't know about that you haven't heard about that would fit you perfectly. So take the blinders off, pull them back, and take it all in and make the best decisions based on what's in your heart, what's in your mind, and then also get counsel from people around you. Find that one man or woman in the yellow hat, Curious George, that one person that can give you some counsel that can help you make that decision. And if you don't make the right one, you can keep making them, because I've done many, many different jobs. And so you don't have to stay in something, if it's not the right fit, you can keep it moving.
Yep. Ed, 1 minute on this, and then we're going to move to the giveaway.
All right, real quick, Brianna, I would say passion. Follow your passion. Think about what you're passionate about. Literally, don't think about the job or the specifications of a qualification. Just think about what you're passionate about. Because if you're passionate about it, sometimes you can create your own job. Sometimes you can help people understand where the job needs to go or what the function really should be, because your passion will come through and it'll show people that, oh, this is, you thought of it better than they did. You figured out something that they didn't figure out. And sometimes you're not able to do that immediately. As Leland said, you need to go into another job or go into a job, but then but never lose that passion. Never let someone else whittle down what you wanted ultimately is inside, because that is what's going to make you successful. That's how you're going to be, you're unique. We're all unique, and you have to bring your uniqueness and not let people whittle it down to something that fits into a job.
Let them see your light. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to start gliding towards wrapping this up, but I think, Ed, we're going to do a giveaway here. So I need you to describe what it is, and then I think you're going to ask a question, and we can get an answer to it.
First thing I'm going to do is sort of take this back here. Can everyone see what's behind me? That's an empty NFL stadium. That stadium is normally on a Sunday in the fall. It's filled with 69, 70,000 people. And so what I want to do is make you one of them. And not only will you be one of the people, and you and a friend, two of you, will get to come to a Seahawks game. This probably in the 21 season, because we're going to not have fans in the building this year, likely. But I'd like to have you come join me and be my guest. VIP, sideline, club level seats, VIP parking, backstage, behind the scenes view of the stadium, obviously getting to maybe meet some of the players, what have you. Orlando's not qualified, or he's not eligible because he's already done it once. That's why he does it. But some of the other panelists aren't eligible either, but one of you will be. And so I'm not sure how we're going to figure out who gets to ask, or who gets to answer the questions in what order, but I'm going to ask a question, and then someone's got to tell me how we're going to identify who's going to answer it and who got it first. So the question I'd like to have answered is, during my discussion about keeping players safe, I talked about something that we rely on heavily to keep them safe. It was a device. Can someone tell me the size of that device? I actually mentioned how large it was or how small it was. First person to tell me that wins the prize. I saw a JP Laguerre, if I pronounced the name correctly. That JP is the first one I saw. It said 2x2. You are exactly correct. JP, you are the winner. I was hoping it would take a little longer, but JP.
Hey, people were paying attention to you, Ed.
My goodness.
Good. So good job. I think Christine's going to reach out to you, JP, but I can't wait to see you out here in Seattle next year. We'll get together on which game it's going to be. Let's make it let's have fun. Let's go out here and win a game.
Perfect. I'm going to just thank you guys for your participation and energy on this panel. It was great. I learned something, and I know the panelists did. And so, Leland, Ed, thank you. A lot of great tidbits. A couple things that I would say, who's that person? That being curious. Both of you talked about it, being curious and asking questions and taking thoughts from those around you. You'd be a great astronaut was a key thing for Leland, and you talked about passion, Ed, and so a lot of great stuff, and then some good books for us to read. Right, Racialized Trauma, White Fragility. How'd you get that job? I'll recommend that too, because I'm proud of that book. But continuing to feed yourself are all things that I think will help you on your journey. So appreciate that. And I'm going to turn it back over to our fearless leader, Landon.
And Leland had his hand up with his book. So that's a good book too.
Oh, yep. Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Then,
we get all the book drops.
Well, I was going to say, and also, that's right. And we also need to, somebody asked earlier a lot about that career advice. Orlando, you have a great book, which is, how did you get that job? And so, Orlando is humble. And so he's not talking about that. But I think that last question, that Brianna asked, I would really encourage you. Orlando's done an incredible amount of great work. Check out his book and hear from him about the career that he's been able to build as well. So these are all great leaders. I want to do a couple thank yous. One, Dr. Garibaldi, thank you for coming on and for the partnership with you and Grant Ircon Murray and the entire Sigma Pi Phi team and family. Thanks so much, Orlando, for you doing just an incredible job moderating, these big ballers, here. Ed, thank you for, coming on, and, you guys you're crazy busy, and we super appreciate, you. Leland, you are my brother from another mother. Thank you so much for you doing the great work, that you do. I want to thank all of the attendees who are on with us, being with us for day one. I really hope that you come back and be a part of day two. And then what I want to say is, if you're in the audience and your brand is up on the screen, I want to thank you. Thank you for making this possible. None of you paid anything to be a part of this conference or in this VIP session, because we have these great partners, Dassault, Regeneron, Thermo Fisher, Blue Origin, Sensata. There's so many here. I won't have the opportunity to mention all of them, but I want to thank everybody. And then if your logo is not on here, then we want to encourage you to join us in the Next Frontier Next Frontier initiative, because we want to accelerate 100,000 more Brianna Allens. I was so happy to see Brianna, come on, and then Christian, who's in middle school, who came on. We want to see them accelerated so that we can achieve parity in this country. And by the way, we do have a new administration, and I think we can hold them accountable to being able to make sure that we achieve parity in this next 10 years. JFK was bold and said, "I'll put a man on the moon." Didn't know how he was going to do it, but he was willing to lead with courageous intentionality. And that's what we all need to do. So thank you, everybody. Please come back to the conference tomorrow. It's not too late for you to share it with young people and young adults. Tomorrow is going to be incredible with the life sciences segment, with the fintech segment. Leland will be back with another STEM career playbook. And we're just super excited to be together. So everyone have a great night, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Landon.